Well, everyone, football enjoyers and sports enjoyers alike. In Canada this weekend, the what's going to be the biggest playoff games, in my opinion, in Canadian sport get underway Saturday because there's no other big playoff games going on Friday night or Saturday night. With the CFL playoffs, and who better to join me than two person that covers the Argonauts and a person who talks about the Argonauts on the radio on TSN 1050 than Ben Grant. So I'm not even going to jump into an introduction before we get to the playoffs. We're going to kind of dissect their season. So, in your opinion, where do you think not everything went wrong, but just what was the main the main flaw you saw with this team in 2025?
Well, not everything went wrong, but a lot went wrong. There,
Yeah.
there weren't, anytime because they had expectations coming into this season at the very least of making the playoffs, hosting a home playoff game. But I do think being the defending Grey Cup champs, you're thinking about, hey, we got to get back there. And no, the team probably wasn't as strong, and I think definitely wasn't as strong on paper as last year's team. They were really picked apart, and they had a lot of new faces, but expectations were high, and it was almost from the get-go, like right in training camp. You had Wyndham McManus got banged up in training camp. Chad Kelly, who we didn't know last offseason. They were a little bit unsure as to how his leg would recover, but we'd heard different things. And maybe game one we heard in the offseason, and then it seemed likely to be later on. And once you have those two, maybe the most important player on offense and defense, both banged up from the beginning. And obviously Chad never came in this year. Winton was never really Winton either. And so those two things alone, I think, are enough to derail any team. Go around the CFL, pick any team, take out their quarterback, take out their best defensive player, and see what you're left with.
I would argue just the heartbeat of the team too with Winton McManus. The thing about Chad Kelly, I always say, and our colleagues at Three Down Nation put it best, I feel like Dinwiddie was always cautiously optimistic that he was going to play. And that I know people were getting annoyed and pissed off where it's like, why do you keep moving the needle back and back and back? Where I think he was hopeful all year long that he was going to play, but I think once reality set in that, hey, this injury is probably going to take a lot longer to get back from, both physically. And I still think a lot of people gloss over the mental aspects of, hey, planting your foot in the ground and not having it snap is a big hurdle to overcome as well. I just don't think Winton was himself all year. We know he was pretty much playing on one leg essentially for most of the year between like some of the injuries, I believe knee, groin, etc. But the big thing with this team is the fact, even though they won 5 games, they still never had that like mentality of a bad team. Like I vividly remember talking to Arbuckle, I think it was after the Labor Day game in Hamilton, and him saying that like, hey, I've been in bad locker rooms before, and this is not a bad locker room. So I think more than not what went wrong, I think it was just an unlucky season. Sometimes you get the breaks to go your way. I don't know if you're a golfer or not. Sometimes you hit it straight down the fairway. Sometimes you shank it into the woods. And unfortunately, Toronto, there was more shanks than solid drives.
Yeah, and I think probably a team like last year's, or that the other Grey Cup winning team, even the 2022 team with that amazing record they had, they probably were good enough to get past some bad luck. And I think this team, they had some great players, and certainly they did have some bad luck. But I think what Arbuckle said, Dinwiddie echoed that as well in his sort of the Sunday post-season breakdown when he was kind of reviewing stuff. He talked about the locker room culture being really strong, which you don't get on 5-win teams. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. And good on you from getting that out of Arbuckle too, because I think that speaks volumes to the fact that an overhaul isn't needed in Toronto. They've got a lot of pieces, and for one of the first times since like 2019, they don't have a billion free agents going out the door. So this is a nice situation for the Argos to be in, where they're going to be able to keep anyone that they want to keep pretty much. They've got a lot of the important pieces under contract. There are some questions, but the fact that this was a good locker room, they were really close in a lot of games. There was maybe one game, and we take away the last game of the season maybe, but there was one game in which they just didn't feel like they belonged on the field all year. Maybe that Hamilton home game that they had, where it got away from them. I think every other game they were right in there down to the wire, or had a chance to win, or were winning going to the last 3 minutes. This was a good Argos team, but just not quite good enough to overcome some obstacles.
The other thing I think too is just there were some opportunities they let slip by them. Like I always remember the second game in Winnipeg, where Winnipeg did everything in their power to lose that game.
I know.
That one, the blown 22-1 lead against Ottawa. Even the Montreal game, like in the two Montreal games, not the
Both.
first game of the year,
Yeah.
but the one where they blew the lead, and then the second one where they had the chance to go down. So that's what I mean with the bad luck stuff. But like you say, we go in the room, we look. There's always that hope. There's always that belief. But and also hopefully that what happens in 2026 isn't like what happened the last time after they missed the playoffs, and everything goes downhill and the world shuts down. Certain things
Yeah.
you just can't control. But the big thing with this team is just the fact that I'm excited to see who comes back, but also the fact of who comes in the door, because the people that are coming in the door, it's not going to be your typical CFL season. You're probably I don't know right now. I don't know if you know where they're going to be spending the first 2 months of the year for practice more than anything. Because if I had to be a betting man, I would say the odds of them not practicing at Lamport Stadium are going to be like minus 5,000 throughout the first 2 months.
You can't really, because it sounds like, and I don't know I never know anything, and I think
No.
I should always preface this before I open my mouth about anything. I never know anything, but it sounded to me like when I was overhearing people talking about FIFA's plans. These aren't Argos people; these are just people in general talking
Yeah.
about living in Liberty Village and what it's going to be like. And it sounds like just a lot of the area is just going to be shut down, like basically locked down for I mean, potentially weeks and months. And so it's probably not realistic. And if you're practicing at Lamport, it means you're still using the locker room at BMO, and I just don't think that's going to be a possibility. So I don't have any answers, but it feels to me like you kind of have to set up a temporary home. So we'll see what ends up happening. We know they're going to be in Guelph for training camp, but yeah, we'll see where they go after that. I'm curious to see.
I'm curious to see as well, just because I feel like they'll do camp at University of Guelph. Obviously, it's another topic for another day if they wanted to play. Because at first, when they announced their plans for home games for next year, I was okay with it. Because I'm like, you know what, hey, they want to get the money. But then once you realize what the BC Lions are doing, I'm kind of like, and also selfishly, because I only live 25 minutes from Alumni Stadium and the University of Guelph. But the fact that, hey, you could have done it, because part of me also thought, did TSN step in and say something where they're like, hey, not the stadium setup, but like, hey, for a broadcast setup, because we all know University of Guelph, it's a fine stadium, but like it's not perfect. It's your typical OUA stadium. But I feel like they can't run. I feel like they'll probably end up doing like York University, if I had to guess, or maybe University of Toronto, Mississauga. Like I think once the season starts, you have to keep it in the GTA, because you can't keep, hey, you're going to practice in Guelph all week, and then you got to do about a 45-minute drive to Pearson, fly somewhere, fly back to Pearson late at night, haul a bus back to Guelph, because we know, living in the dorm rooms, I know the players aren't the biggest fans of it in the world, and I know your colleague Mike Hogan, most of them get cabin fever, and they're like, get me out of here by the time that preseason game rolls around at the end of May. So I feel like there is a plan in place. It's just, curiously wondering, like going back to my original point of Murph, Dinwiddie, and Pinball selling people on the idea of, hey, last year was last year, the past is the past, because we all have to remember, going into this year, Ryan Dinwiddie's floor is getting to the East Final. This is the
Yeah.
first year he's facing adversity, but he faced it head on. He did a great job with it. But yeah, 2026 is going to be very interesting, just because you have an East Division where Montreal's not going anywhere. Hamilton's going to be interesting to see what they do, just because we don't know, will Bo be back? What kind of talent will they have? Just, overall, because that's just football. But then you have the wild card Red Blacks, who just fired their coach about a week ago. So it's a beautiful thing about the CFL game. Parity exists year in and year out.
Yeah, I think you have to almost leave the Red Blacks out. You can't worry about them right now because we have no idea. We have no clue what they're going to look like. And I didn't think they're going to have to add a lot of pieces to be
Yeah.
competitive, not just coaching staff. There is going to be that is a rebuild. That's an overhaul. They don't even know what they're going to do at quarterback. So they've got a lot to do. So I'm not really thinking about them right now. Not that they can't surprise. Like no one was thinking about Calgary coming into this season, and they surprised a lot of people. So it can happen. But Montreal is going to get picked apart like the Argos did. They're going to have they've got some free agents coming up, and it is going to be very tough to keep. They've had a really good team now 2 years in a row. They didn't lose many pieces last year, but this year you've got a lot of contracts up. So we'll see how they deal with that. And yeah, Hamilton, who knows, right? Like if Hamilton, Argos fans don't want to hear this, but suppose Hamilton wins it all. Like, could you see Bo just sort of stepping away and saying, you know what, there's no more perfect time. As well as he's playing, this is the right time to step away and retire. But who knows? Who knows what they're going to look like too? But they weren't, even though they won the East and fairly easily, I guess, they they weren't an unbeatable team by any means. There really wasn't one in the CFL this year. There was a lot of parity, and but again, that's what's so frustrating from an Argos perspective is they were right there, right? You think they destroyed BC at the C&E game. They had wins over Hamilton, wins over Winnipeg, like all these playoff teams.
Labor Day.
Yeah, like they found ways to beat pretty much everybody, and yeah, and you probably should have at least been in overtime with Saskatchewan, and that horrendous last second kick return with 11 men on the field. Like it was just one of those seasons where they were good enough. They could be easily among these playoff teams, and I would feel pretty good about their chances going into any of these matchups.
So I also say too that just going to your Hamilton point, that obviously, look, you and I both, even though you're the color commentator on radio, I'm a reporter for the Team We Call. You and I are both Argonauts fans, but the big difference with me with the CFL is I can like differ myself between the fan and the reporter spectrum. And from the reporter side, the story of Hamilton winning would be very beautiful, for lack of a better word. Just the 26 years plus the passing of Ted Gavaya, it just kind of would culminate. And so it's just like a beautiful storybook end where it's like, we did this for our GM. We brought him in. He got sick, passed away. And then Montreal, you kind of have this, for as good as they were this year, and they did have their moments. Jason Moss reminds me a lot of Dan Campbell, like the CFL's version of Dan Campbell. Obviously not as psychopathic, but just for the sense of like, he's like, yeah, hey, we don't care what you think about us. We're going to do to our thing. We're going to beat to the bang of our own drum. I hope I got that quote right, and just keep going.
Yeah.
But look, I only say they'll be fine because they just extended him. Danny Machocha got an extension. I feel like they'll be fine and challenging, but then next year I think you might see them face some hurdles. And then in Ottawa, I don't want to count them out yet, just because I'll be honest with you. I wrote Calgary's obituary in May when I was just like, hey, I don't think this team's going anywhere. And then week 1, they beat Hamilton. Week 2, they come in and they pick 6 Nick Arbuckle right away. And they just kept proving people wrong, to where I did the same thing with the Colts too. So I was basically did the one thing in life you're not supposed to do. And folks, for those of you wondering, it's stand behind a horse, because they will kick you. I got kicked by the horse. So if you're wondering what the podcast title comes from, 13 minutes and 13 seconds. But no, going back to Toronto though, they have a lot of momentum. They have a lot of fuel in the tank. They have that, like I said, they just have I think they'll get that buy-in from Dinwiddie. But on the coaching staff side, I don't think it's crazy to say I think you need just to stick with one defensive coordinator. I know it's worked the last couple of years of having 2. I think for 2026, you just have to have a concrete plan of having one guy calling the defense. You have RD calling the offense. You have Mickey Donovan, special teams coordinator. I think for DC, you either have to find an outside candidate or just promote one of the guys and then just have one of them go. I don't know. That's just me. I feel like, because sometimes, how they say too, sometimes less cooks in the kitchen makes a better meal.
I agree with you. I like the idea. I've always liked the idea of one coordinator, because that's just what I've known, and that's a system I've operated in as a coach. That's just what I'm familiar with. I had trouble defending my views last year because the Argos won the Grey Cup with co-defensive coordinators. So, and the defense was what won them the Grey Cup. So it was really hard to sort of say, yeah, see, I told you, when they went out and achieved the highest pinnacle of the season. But I do think it takes a really special pairing to do it. And, maybe that was something that Ivan and Fields had together, maybe just that relationship. And they knew coming into, because they had spent a couple seasons together, that maybe this would work. To me, it's just such a rarity to be able to work. I just don't see, leadership doesn't work like that in almost any setting. Like, you can't imagine and not that this is the military, but the military doesn't have a lot of things close to it. Football is one of the closest things to it, where you've got this system of command and different responsibilities, and you never have a situation where you don't know who to look to for orders, for your hierarchy. And so I do think there needs to be a number one guy, and I like Jason Shivers. I think Shivers is a really good defensive backs coach. I don't know enough. I'm not in the room with them. I don't know how that play calling system. Maybe it was just fine, and maybe that wasn't anything to do with the problem. But I think when you're looking to point some fingers on the defensive side of the ball, because the defense was a bit of a problem this year, I think maybe doing the one thing that no one else does, you have to maybe look at first and say, yeah, let's get back to one person as the defensive coordinator. That's the way I lean. And again, I leaned that way last year, and obviously I was wrong.
Yeah, like I look at 2024 too, and then everyone won a Grey Cup, and then Edmonton was just like, you get a contract, and you get a contract, and you get a contract, and you get a contract. But no, last year I think too was just the perfect blend of like I always looked at that Ottawa Red Black game literally almost a year ago to where I was like, yeah, this is a team that can really play. This is a team you don't underestimate. Like you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And
Yeah.
then even Winnipeg too, when things got flustered and like because Winnipeg was supposed to be the powerhouse, it's kind of like what we're seeing right now in baseball. Just because obviously, look, 24 hours from now could be very euphoric for a lot of us. The fact that you have this team kind of like a why not us mentality, and you're getting these not unsung heroes, but you're getting, I believe Robert Priester a pick in the Grey Cup. I almost said World Series. That's how tuned in I am to that. I believe Benji Franklin had a pick six. I know Wynton McManus had a pick six. So you're getting contributions from all over the lineup. And even last year too, Kevin Mittal didn't really relatively have the best rookie season. Grey Cup breakout game basically helped win them the thing. Same thing too. But when it comes to offense, the one decision when it happened, I kind of surprised me, but the more and more the season went on, I was just like, I don't think they should have done that, was the cutting of Kadeem Carey. Because I think if there's one real issue that the team needs to face is offensive line. But for even as much good stuff they were getting with Spencer Brown towards the end of the year, I think in the CFL, and especially with where the league's going right now, you need a bell cow back there because we're seeing right now all the best all the teams that are left, they all have a guy right back there that can pound the rock. You have Dedrick Mills in Calgary. You have James Butler, Brady Oliveira, AJ Ouellette. Just the list goes on and on and on to where you really need a guy back there who's going to run with a fistball full of fury.
I think the reason I stand by the moving on from Kadeem Carey is that they had a plan and it actually looked good, which was Mayan Williams.
Yes, and then the
And
concussions.
that was where they were going. And so they were able to move on from Carey, which they needed to do kind of salary wise. You're talking very different paychecks between Kadeem Carey and a rookie in Mayan Williams. Williams had all the makings of a star back with this Toronto team that couldn't really run the ball, like it couldn't create any sort of space for the running backs. He was able to put together a game. He actually had some running numbers. He was on pace for just shy of 1,000 yards, and that's without really getting any touches the first week of the season. I think had he played all season long, he probably would have been 1,000-yard back. A great receiver out of the backfield too. We saw a little bit of that before he got injured, and he was great in pass protection. One of the better backs in the league over the first couple of seasons. He looked to be the total package, and so I don't really blame them for moving on from Carey because they saw in him what I think we got just a little glimpse of. And unfortunately, we don't know what his status is going to be going forward. He suffered that brutal head injury in Ottawa where he just took a knee full speed right to the head and missed the rest of the season from that head injury. And so I just hope, for Mayan Williams as a human being, I hope that he's okay and he's able to fully recover. I don't even want to think about the football part of that until we know that Mayan's going to be okay. But with an injury like that, you never know. And if he is able to come back, I think you also have to be cautious, and you probably need a plan B because head injuries being what they are, they're so unpredictable, they're so dangerous. And so Toronto is kind of back at square one again. And I think they, Ryan Dinwiddie alluded to this in his postseason comments. He's like, we sort of got to address that position probably as well. But that's the only reason that they did miss Kadeem Carey, but they didn't know they were going to because of what they saw in Chop Williams.
Yeah, so that's the thing too with Mayan was just the fact that like you kept seeing hey, he would pop back up like, hey, he's off the sixth game, he's back practicing. But yeah, you are right. There are some injuries in football where it's just you got to let the human get healthy first before you think about the football player there. So if he comes back, he has a full clean bill of health. Like I like the plan of having him, but I do think you either need the bell in the CFL, you need a bell cow or you need a committee. Because if you can get a solid committee, like I would say Mayan Williams, you bring in someone else, and then you have Spencer Brown kind of as that like versatile, you can have him in the backfield, you can play him out in motion because you can do unlimited motions in the CFL, folks. That stuff's not going away no matter what the weirdos on Twitter tell you. It's the fact I've had a lot of talks about the rules here. I'm kind of I understand why they're doing some of them. I actually got to speak to Stuart Johnson as well at the final Argos game. So there's sides of me that understand why they're doing it, but then I think there's people online that are taking it a little bit too not too far. But I just want to be like, guys, like it's this is what's happening. They're not going back. Just accept it for what it is. But going back to the running back rule, I just think like the offense has all the pieces there. You had some guys who have no, I wouldn't say down years, but you had guys who were like not playing to their potential, like a Tavares Daniels and DeMonte Cokes. Obviously, injuries play a part to that. I also have been a big proprietor of Tavares Daniels' numbers with versus without Chad Kelly are significant.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the splits, like when Chad Kelly came back last year, Tavares' stock just shot out of a cannon. But if you really want to encapsulate of how this Argo season went and, a position that needs fixing, when your best offensive lineman gets hit by a car who's a huge human being, kind of a red flag of like really the direction of where your season's going into when it pertains to injuries, because out of every single injury that they could have had in the room, just losing your best offensive lineman and then him coming back and like having moments where he looks good and then having moments where the offensive line's just off key. It's a unit that needs to get fixed. I just don't want them to get like, so obsessive where it like you have to like fix one where like you think, hey, you got to fix one, but then you can't fix another, to where the offensive line, they have to think, I think you have to go into training camp with a solid concrete plan of like, hey, these are our 5 guys. Not it's like, hey, left tackle's up for debate or like right guard's up for debate. Because if you start doing that and playing that guessing game with the offensive line and playing musical chairs there, that's ultimately what's going to get you to a bottom tier offensive line, no matter where you're playing football, if it's in Canada or in the States.
I think they need a tackle. I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
that they've got it like Nicastro. I stand by him being the best center in the league.
Yeah.
I know he's not going to be an all-star this year. I feel he should be. The job he is asked to do is not the same job that other centers are doing. He's left one-on-one with nose tackles. He doesn't get the same help. He's had a revolving door on either side of him at guard, and every week he does his job to keep the quarterback clean. He's calling what he sees on the line. Communication is great no matter who's next to him. And so I think I really do think he's in a category on his own. And despite the fact the line played terribly all year long, it was never him. And so I think you've got that piece in Nicastro. You've got Ryan Hunter under contract, and I think you might consider moving him back into guard. I think a healthy Brendan Kemp. I thought he showed some stuff there. Enough to be able to have him at least as one of the tackles. I think you're inviting a few more tackles into camp as well. And I do think it's probably not going to take that many pieces. And like you said, like the receiving core is set. You got all these guys in Coxie and Polk and Herslow, like the weapons that you've got to play around with. Mittal. I forgot about Kevin Mittal, a guy with like over 100 catches, right? Like that's a great receiving core. If Chad Kelly's healthy, and even if you're not 100%, you've got Arbuckle right there under contract too. The offense is set. Like add one tackle, find a running back. Your offense is good to go. And I'm not even sure how many pieces the defense needs. They need D-line help. There's no question. But as we'll see what happens with we'll see Brian Cox Jr. and DeMarcus Christmas. Who knows what's going to happen with Ralph Hawley? He might be back. He's still not signed by anyone right now in the NFL. So this is not a really tough rebuild like we see with some other teams, like you're seeing Ottawa probably looking at.
Yeah, so with the offensive line too, another guy I really always want to see perform, but he just can't stay healthy too, is Dylan Giffen as well. I feel like,
Yeah.
every year he's like he has his moments where he shines, but then injuries just always flare up with him. Like he's dealt with back, he's dealt with knee. Like you think he's healthy, he's playing great, and then he has a setback. It's just, and I don't like when guys say injury prone. I think it's just the nature of the beast sometimes with the position you play. Yeah, D line I'm not too concerned about as well, because you had guys like Derek Parrish really emerge. You had Andrew Chatfield as well was a really solid contributor on that line. You had like a room full of guys who just really came together and like were able to make plays happen when they could. If anything, with the defense, maybe adding in another solid linebacker to go along with Judge and Winton, if Winton is back. I'm not sure what the total length of the contract was, if it was 1 year or 2 that he signed last year.
Yeah, I
But
think Winton's a free agent coming into this year. I think that's their like they don't have a lot, but I think that's the big decision they have to make. And that's interesting because they've got a great linebacker room. I love Aaron Casey. I think he's ready to become a starting middle linebacker. Now, curiously, they didn't really use him that way. They preferred Dark Angelo, who I also really like. But
Yes.
I think anytime Casey was on the field, he was doing something special. If I'm building the team, if I'm Pinball Clemens and John Murphy, I think long and hard about Aaron Casey as a starting middle linebacker. I hate, and don't take this the wrong way. Like, I don't want to lose Winton. Nobody should ever want to lose Winton.
No.
He's the best linebacker in the CFL. He might be the best defensive player in the CFL, but and he's the leader on that team too. And so it comes at a cost. I'm very aware of that. But you have this luxury of being able to go younger and kind of inexpensive at linebacker with the guys you've got under contract right now. Maybe it is worth putting money in other positions because you know you're going to be just fine with Casey, D'Arcangelo, Cameron Judge. You've got some great linebacker pieces there. And again, like and we're going to hate if Wyndon leaves, he's going to play somewhere else and he's going to crush the Argonauts every time he plays because he's amazing. But
Yeah.
I just think in terms of budget and cap management, I would strongly consider looking at that as an option.
I still have a feeling if Winton were to leave, I think there's another team not too far from where we are that probably will make a significant push to get him because the last two
Yeah,
off seasons, Hamilton's like, you were a great Argonauts defender. Great. You're now a tie cat. They did it with Jamal Peters. They did it
yeah,
with Deshaun Amos. And we all know, too, if Wynton McManus and Darren and Varasek were to be paired up at linebacker there in Hamilton, that would be quite the duo. No, but the only thing I was going to say with positional needs really is just, I would say, DB and that's the thing. Not even DB. I don't even think you need significant tuning. I think you just need to add in a couple. Not like go. I would go out and maybe trade or try to find a solid contributor in free agency. But when it comes to quarterback for this team, I think I would say it's not the Calgary game alone. I think you can roll out a quarterback room next year of Kelly. You have Arbuckle there as a great security blanket. I think you give Max Duggan a chance with QB3.
yeah.
Like Jared Daggy and Tucker Horn were great guys to deal with, but what I saw down the stretch, and especially in that Calgary game, I was just like, I not that I can't do it. I don't want to say that about anyone because obviously they're much better talented men than I am. But Max Duggan showed a lot of flair to where you want to keep that as a back pocket insurance policy, in case of injury, if you want to throw him out in some funky motions, what's to stop you from doing it?
Yeah, I like Max Duggan a lot as a QB3. I
Yeah.
haven't seen enough from him to say, yeah, he could be your backup, but you don't have to worry about that because you've got Chad and Nick as your 1-2. Max Duggan is everything I want in a third string quarterback. And again, I feel kind of bad about this because I'm a huge Tucker Horn fan. I think he can do some really special stuff. I didn't really get, I never really, I haven't seen enough still from Daggy. I know we got to see him play a lot. There's still some questions I have about him. I have way more questions about Horn, but that's what I want to see answered more than anything else. Um, but I don't think we're going to get an opportunity to have those answered because, like you said, I think we saw just in that one game, Max Duggan. He's a special quarterback. We saw what he did with TCU a couple of years ago. If you're taking the Horn Frogs all the way to the national championship game, you're doing something right. And for a third string quarterback, a guy who can come in, run short yardage, not just sneaks, but actually threaten and put pressure on the defense in third and short situations where he could go to the air, he can run it himself. He's got that frame to be able to deal with the quarterback sneaks and that kind of punishment too. He's a great runner and can throw the football. He's sort of got that je ne sais quoi quality to him as well, where he just seems to know how to put the dagger in teams. And so I like that. My third string quarterback. Love to see that.
So the other thing too with Max Duggan is just and like I say, no slight to Horn and no slight to Daggy. It's just when you think long term with this league, it's great to have it, especially because for all we know, Kelly walks away from the game or even does an Enoch Mwamba. That's, I think, one thing that people aren't familiar with. Enoch missed all of 2023, 2024. He was like, yeah, you know what, I'm done. For as much as Chad wants to come back and he was a part of the team, there's still a small part of, and I don't want to say that me thinks, but there's a small part of me that wants to, or not even assume, but I don't think you can leave the option open of what if he just says, hey, I've done what I needed to. I've won 2 Grey Cups, even though he wasn't officially on the roster for the second one. He was not even in Vancouver with the team. I think he was in Toronto. I don't even think he traveled because he was just removed from surgery. But
Yeah.
I think that's something. I don't think it will happen, but I think it's something people kind of got to keep their head on the swivel for because of this, not because he was injured, but because of the severity of the injury he suffered. To where if that happens, Then you got to roll to quarterback room where you have Arbuckle and you have Duggan. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Just it's something that came to my head where I'm like, you know what, hey, if you got to kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you're an Argonaut fan, or let alone if you work for the team.
Yeah, you have to be aware of that. And again, I think just in being logical, right? Like
Yeah,
we've seen cases like this where a very serious injury is
Bill
enough to kind
Theismann.
of, yeah, like, right. And you say, you know what, I don't know if I want to jeopardize what might be, quality of life going forward, or what have you. And I don't know what Chad's thinking, or we can't know what his leg feels like. But it's tough. You alluded to it earlier too, like the mental side of this. It's tough. Like, I've coached a number of guys that have come back from knee injuries, and at the quarterback spot, it is really difficult to get those guys to feel comfortable in the pocket again. I've had guys with that tib fib break before, but never at quarterback. And I can imagine it's the same kind of thing where no matter how good you feel running through ladder drills and agility work, when you're in the pocket and you've got 300-pound plus men running all around you, and you remember not only the pain of the injury, but the excruciating length and commitment of the rehab, all of that, like how guys are able to push that aside is amazing. And so you have to wonder, and maybe that's overwhelming. I don't know. I don't know. From all indication, it sounds like Chad was getting better and better throughout. Had the season maybe been um, a month longer, who knows if this ends up differently? But I have to think physically, if he's ever going to be ready to go, it will be for the start of next season.
Yeah.
And while you have to have a plan B always, I feel like the coaching staff is really counting on him to be the guy. I've never got any indication that they're wavering and thinking like, oh, I don't know if this will happen. But I think you're not doing your due diligence if you don't at least consider the possibility.
Yeah, like I'm not even saying for them to consider the possibility, but like it could be one of those things where, like I don't know what Ben Grant's thinking on a daily basis. Ben doesn't know what I'm thinking on a daily basis. It's one of those things where it could be in the back of his head too. We all know he's a new father. There's a lot of off-field stuff obviously he's dealt with throughout his career and within last year in the CFL too, but I don't want to go down that dark path. I don't dark path, excuse me. I don't want to go down that path. But pretty much it's his decision at the end of the day of, hey, do you want to play? Like, do you feel good enough to play? Because we're not going to know because you can't even say preseason, but that first Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday in June where he steps on the field, plants his leg in the ground and makes a throw or makes a run, and he says, hey, my leg didn't snap, or hey, I got hit by that large human being on the other side of the field and I got up from it. So I think until then, we're not really going to know which Chad we're going to see, but the Argonauts have all the makings for a 2026 underdog, kind of like you have some teams in the CFL doing right now. Because this isn't just an Argonauts post-mortem, excuse me. Ben and I got two games to talk about because, like I said off the top, probably the two biggest playoff games in Canada over the next 48 hours are about to go down in the CFL playoffs. As always, picks presented by Gents Boutique. Odds courtesy of our friends at TunyBet. We start with a crossover. The Montreal Alouettes laying 5.5 at home against the Bombers. For as much as I think Montreal can win this game, there are two key X factors for the Bombers I really like. One's Brady Oliveira, but the other Sergio Castillo, because I think this is going to be a really grimy, just nail whichever team can just grind the other one down the most for 60 minutes, because it's going to be a gross day in Montreal Saturday afternoon. I think I saw it was like 5 degrees and raining. So if you're going to Percival Molson, pack your poncho.
Yeah, the weather's going to be terrible. I think bad weather favors Winnipeg. Bad weather usually favors the underdog. I find like the more
Yep.
skilled team doesn't want weather to be a deciding factor. They want a beautiful day. I think Winnipeg is very happy that it's cold and rainy. It suits them just fine. They've got a great running game. I think it's going to be a very tight game. I still will take Montreal only because Davis Alexander somehow has still not lost a football game. Like I don't know how this keeps happening. I don't even know why it's not a bigger story. Like this guy just doesn't lose football games, and Winnipeg hasn't played him this year. They lucked out a little bit in that they didn't have to face him. I thought it was going to happen last week. It didn't, and I think he's a very. I'm one of the last people to come around on him. I was very skeptical. I'm bought in, and I think he just adds a dynamic to that team that they don't otherwise have. And Winnipeg's not Winnipeg anymore. There weren't many games, maybe one or two this season, where you're like, oh yeah, that's the Blue Bomber team I know over these last few years. They haven't looked like that. And Zach Collaros these last few years hasn't been great in the playoffs. Didn't really have a good season this year. Will that matter if it's raining enough? Maybe it's just ground game punting and 60-yard field goals from Castillo. We'll see. If I were placing wagers on this, I think you take the points, because I think this is just going to be a one of those games that comes down to the end. It'll be a 1 or 2 point decision. But I feel good. Montreal at home. I would be surprised if the Alouettes lost this one.
Also, programming note, because of potential World Series Game 7, this game will be starting at 2 p.m. Eastern instead of 3 p.m. Eastern. From a betting perspective, I'm going to say this. I love the under. I like Montreal to win, but I do like Winnipeg on the points, just because playoff experience, even though for Winnipeg's had a bad year, playoff experience matters. Davis Alexander's, he's not had the spotlight yet where he's had to play November football. So it's going to be interesting to see how he comes out and responds. But I'll be honest with you, the more of the latter of these games is the West semifinal with BC taking on Calgary. Spread's the exact same. That over's a little higher because they're playing indoors. BC Place is looking to be over 30K for Saturday, which is awesome to see. For as much as Calgary's impressed me this year, I just think BC has a certain factor to them that reminds me a lot of what Montreal did 2 years ago and what Toronto was going through last year, where they are finding their stride at the right time. And we all know in football, it's not about what your record is. It's about how you're playing when the games come around. And more than anything with BC than their offense is the fact that they've turned their defense around, and Matthew Betts reminded himself, oh, hey, I'm really good at what I do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're the best team in the league right now.
Yeah.
Records thrown out the window in the playoffs. They are playing the best football. They are, and is peaking at the right time. This is the Vladimir Guerrero of what's happening in the CFL. Like they're on fire right now. They have looked unbeatable for several weeks in a row. I think you'd be foolish to bet against them. And I think this game could get out of hand. Like it actually, I could see them blowing this thing wide open, and Calgary just having trouble hanging with them. Now, again, it's the CFL. Vernon Adams would love nothing more than to go back into BC Place and bring Calgary out with a win. They've got talent. There's no question. I like Calgary's defense. I do think they've got some weapons, and obviously, Vernon, if he plays well, if he has a really good game, he can hang with anybody. I like the run game, but I just think I haven't seen a lot of success from teams trying to keep up with BC when they're firing.
Yeah, so that's the thing too with BC, is just the fact that I always look back at that game when they went to Calgary at the middle of September, where it was like, hey, you're an underdog, you're going into Calgary. Calgary's played a couple bad games, and what they do, they put, I think they put 50 on them that night. It was the game that followed Toronto Montreal, to where that was the game where I think a lot of people realized, like, holy crap, the BC Lions are really good. Because, like, obviously they had the rough start. They had the game against Toronto. They had the comeback happen, Dustin Crum leading Ottawa to the comeback.
So the weird losses, like they lost to Toronto and Ottawa, but yet are the best team in the league. So,
And then they have moments where they'll just outshine you and outclass you. Buck Pierce really has that mentality where it's like, hey, we don't like the outside. We don't care about the outside noise. We know the job's not finished. He's basically gotten them to buy in. And when you can do that and they're clicking on all cylinders, bought in, that is a very scary thing to have. No, like I say, no matter what the level of football is, whether it's the NFL or the CFL, you get the buy-in at the right time. Possibilities are endless. Like we all know, and I heard this on Winnipeg Sports Talk with their CFL show, that Nathan Rourke's probably going to win MOP, but will he have his teammates with him in Vancouver 2 weeks tonight at
yeah,
the CFL Awards?
yeah, it's I don't know, but I'm really interested to see if I want to see how that works out. I do think he'll win the MO. He should. I think he should be the league's MOP. I think he's been outstanding. But just one last thing on BC as a team.
Yeah.
You look at their O line and their D line. I love that in the playoffs, and I know they're going to have to leave BC Place if they win in Calgary. They're going to have to go on the road in the tough conditions. I love their O line. I love Matthew Betts, like you talked about, is such a presence there, and they've really turned that defense around. I think they've got all the right pieces, and Rourke is probably the best player in the CFL this year. And so, if he's your leader, and you've got great play in the trenches too, we know they've got receivers and Hatcher and guys that can go make plays. This team is going to be. It's going to take a very strong game from no matter who it is to take out the BC Lions.
I really think this game is going to go one of two ways. Either it's BC by at least a score by 7 or 10, or it's Calgary squeaking one out. And if I have to pick BC just for like what we've said, the fact, like, look, their O line's playing great, D
Yeah.
line's playing great. They're getting contributions on offensive from everyone, whether it be James Butler, whether it be Keon Hatcher, Aiden Eberhardt's someone who's come along really late in the year that I've liked as well.
Hmm.
They've got position players that will kill you no matter where you go. And also, too, Nathan Ward can really run around and make plays when it matters most. The one play from him that I really looked at for him where I've seen his maturity as a quarterback was him running the clock out against Toronto at the end of September there in BC, where it was
Yeah.
just, hey, you have a chance to get it? No, we're going to grind you down and we're going to kill you. And
Yeah.
with Calgary, I just don't think they have the, for lack of a better word, horses on defense anymore to keep up with that. I really think if Calgary is doing this, Vernon Adams has to play perfect football, and Dedrick Mills has to go for over 100 yards easily if they're going to win this game. If not, if they can figure out that BC Lions defense, it could be a different story. But I got to ride with the hot hand, so I ultimately have Hamilton, Montreal, and then Sask, BC next weekend for the East and West to go to Winnipeg, even though part of me does want to see Winnipeg go just to see the crossover team get their own locker room.
Yeah, I know, but I agree with you. I think those are the picks for this week, and I think that sets you up for a really nice next week. But these are good games. We've got, there's Blue Jays, there's CFL. This is going to be a pretty good weekend of sports.
It is, but you do have to think that people at the league office right now are hoping and praying that the Blue Jays do wrap it up in
Tomorrow
about
night,
20
yeah,
in about 20. They hope that in 36 hours people are just in euphoria and they're like, "Hey, we're the only show on TV tonight. We still moved our game times up," which I don't think they already announced too. They're not going back regardless
yeah,
of what happens tomorrow
yeah,
night. 2 o'clock and 5:30 are the start times, which is interesting for BC because then that's a 3:30 kick in
yeah,
BC. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that works, just because it's a mid-afternoon game for both teams because Calgary's only an hour ahead of them. But no, I think if you're at the league, for as much as you want the spotlight on your own, you're really hoping that the Jays get the job done in 6, as we all do. But you've got a great weekend of football. Sports Equinox may have been Monday, but you also too have a great slate in college football, and the NFL slate Sunday is great too. So if you really like sports, this is the true weekend for you.
yeah. No, sounds good. I can't wait for it. Get my chips out and enjoy the whole thing.
And if you have children tomorrow night, trick or treating is finished by 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, lights are out.
Yes, and also
Pumpkins
too,
in.
one thing I was going to say is yes. Basically, if you see a lights on at a house after 8 o'clock, that's the TV set. Please walk and go to the next house if you're still out for some reason. But no, the one thing I was gonna say too is in our group chat last night, I posted the thing about the Bartholomew singing the anthem, and I showed my wife the video after, and now that's all I can think of is just singing the "Oh Canada" as like "Oh Christmas Tree," and that's literally
Yeah.
all I can think
The
of.
Oh Christmas Tree, I know that was epic. Like I remember when it happened, I was watching that game, and it's like, what is happening here? What is this? But yeah, the one last night in LA wasn't quite to that level, but it was pretty special too. To get the words
Especially,
wrong in both languages is quite something.
yeah, I know. As someone who only knows I know the most French I know is the singing "Oh Canada." Not good. Um, the only thing I was going to ask you before we wrap up here, because obviously, look, we've had a lot of time, we've covered our bases. With the early Grey Cup announced for November 7th, 2027, earliest Grey Cup, I believe, in CFL history. I'm going to come out and say this. I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, for like, because there's people worried about US expansion and with everything with the rules. I like it for the facts that you're not going to have a Grey Cup where it's going to be minus 20 outside. You may have some rough weather, but you're not going to have this, like, because November, there's a huge difference between the beginning of November and then like even the mid, like even that next week where it can go from being,
Oh yeah.
mid high single digits to potentially freezing cold weather. So I think it's good for that. But as well, if you start the CFL season, even that last week of, because I don't think they're moving games. I don't think they're getting rid of a bye week. I just think that
You
you're,
can't really actually. Like
no,
mathematically it would mean someone would have to play twice in a week. You need the two buys in there.
yeah. But also too though for no, I mean for
For
like the
the
regular season, how they go
Oh,
from
yeah,
like
sorry. No,
each
no,
team
I
getting,
yeah, but even that, like, the 21-week season is the only way you can really do that without having someone because of the 9 teams, which makes
yeah.
it so difficult. But, so, yeah, I think it means they will have to start, a week early.
But starting a week early is good though too, because if you can start the last week of May, and I know everyone's thinking, oh, this and this. you can really start your season because I say this with the NFL as someone who loves both leagues. The NFL basically doesn't ever have an off season. They just have their 3 seasons. They have basically the regular season, the draft season, and then what I call the off season.
Mhm.
If you can buy more time from basically the NFL, when their season ends, they go right into the combine, they go right into free agency, drafts at the end of April, which I heard today that their draft will not impact the CFL draft because it's usually always the same time of year. They always usually do that last weekend in April. I think if anything, you just potentially move the CFL draft to before the NFL draft. You just maybe rethink your prospects on who you're going to take. Maybe it opens up the window for more Canadian talent to get selected than American talent you're not totally sure about. But the fact that you're going to have that window of basically the whole month of June, you're already playing. You start at the end of May. You're probably going to get more people out to the games because more people are going to want to go to the games at the end of May than compared to this time of the year because cold in May is stomachable because you know what's coming.
Yeah,
Cold
I
in
think
October.
you can go after schools too in May, right? Like that's you got an extra week of kids being in school. You can get out to them and get them involved and get them out to the park and school teams and sports end of year banquets or whatever it is. Have them participate in that. I think it's a good thing. And like you, I love that it's fun to see snow and -30 and like there's a charming element to that, but it doesn't produce good football. I would rather you have nice weather and the chances of that are greater the earlier it is.
So yeah, that's the other thing too. Is just the fact that like you have that like when everyone's like in like summer mode, they want to get outside, they want to do stuff. Right now, no one's like I don't know about you, but like everyone, like including my household, you're looking for an excuse to stay inside at this time of the year. You're not
Yeah.
looking for an excuse to go outside. Like today was a crappy rainy day all throughout southwestern Ontario. Um, but no, it just you start training camp earlier. You basically do November, so you basically have pretty much the whole month of November, December, January, February, March, and then April. You can kind of you pick it up again, middle April to where hey, training camp you might have a couple weeks where it kind of sucks in there, but then once May rolls around, it's hey, full steam ahead. You have guys report right at the beginning of the month of May, and you go right into it because if you have and I can't see them eliminating preseason games either because they're already at 2. I think if you have one preseason game, that's not fair because you're at the point then where you'll know who's making it versus who's not making it on a CFL roster. But I think there's just a lot of people that are overthinking the early Grey Cup. I think it's just one of those things where right now it's weird, but hope hopefully I'm wrong. But I think they're doing the right thing. Like even I know when announcing it to the Prairies, people were like, "Oh, the Prairies like 5 straight Western Grey Cups or yeah, 4 straight." Because I still think that Toronto is the market. I think Toronto will get it again.
Yeah.
I just think Toronto right now is way too focused, and everyone's gonna say they don't care about the CFL. No, they're just focused on having a World
Oh,
Cup coming to
yeah.
their city.
World Cup is huge. That's all. That's a full-time thing right now.
They're thinking about that because we all know Toronto's the one market where they put a bid in, the league will say yes, we are
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know it'll be 11 years since they've last hosted after the
Right.
2027 Grey Cup, but you look at 28, 29, you got to figure one of them's going to be in Ontario. You have to figure one of them's probably going to be Toronto or Hamilton.
Yep. No, I agree.
Yeah. But anyway, we took a trip down the 403 on episode 403 here for YWC Football Talk. I do that because, as we all know, Ben, that's a highway Ben and I use from time to time. Folks, enjoy the CFL playoffs. Enjoy the World Series too, because I'm trying not to think about it too much. But CFL season, we have 3 weeks. It's kind of weird to think there's only 2 weeks left in the season. It's really weird to think to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for
It's like
sure.
it's like that self-reflecting time where you're like, we've played 21 weeks of football. We got 3 weeks to go. And before you know it, we're going to watch Machine Gun Kelly performing in a very freezing cold Winnipeg. Even though I kind of am more excited for Our Lady of Peace, which I feel like will be an awesome kickoff concert.
Yeah.
But Ben, enjoy the weekend. It was a blast getting to do this. We'll have to chat it up again sometime soon. Argos fans, hopefully you feel a little bit better, a little more optimistic going into 2026. But for one of the voices of the Toronto Argonauts, the great AI photos of him and Mike Hogan, he's Ben Grant. I'm Griff. Keep it unreal and go Jays go.